I'm Eva Pilgrim. Thank you for streaming with us. It's expected to be one of the most high-profile trials in a very, very long time. The United States of America versus Sean Diddy Combs, one of the biggest names in entertainment. Combs got his start in music, but eventually became a mogul in the worlds of fashion, liquor, and even reality TV. He was a common sight on red carpets and seen by many as a man who was in control, the master of his own fate. But now his future will be decided by a jury as he faces allegations of using his power and wealth to sexually abuse, coerce, and exploit alleged victims. He's pleading not guilty. Behind him, a stacked defense team made up of powerhouse attorneys linked to other high-profile cases. On the other side, an all-female prosecution team setting out to convince the jury Combs abused victims and forced them into drug-fueled sexual orgies he called freak-offs, and then allegedly threatened them into silence. We're going to take a deeper look at the jury selection process and how impactful it could be during this case. So many are wondering, how do you find an impartial jury for someone so famous? But before we go there, we want to remind you of the key events that brought us to where we are today, including that disturbing surveillance video first obtained by CNN that shows Combs kicking and dragging then-girlfriend Cassie Ventura at a Los Angeles hotel in 2016. The video surfaced just months before his arrest last year. We'll also break down the 5-count indictment that includes racketeering conspiracy, the most serious charge Combs faces. He has denied all allegations. If convicted, the once seemingly unstoppable rapper and record producer faces what amounts to be a life behind bars after he rejected a plea deal, leaving his fate in the hands of 12 strangers. So what is the burden of proof in the case against Diddy? Here's ABC News Chief Investigative Correspondent Aaron Katersky.
For decades, he was a music industry titan.
He's so handsome.
Known for hits like Been Around the World and launching careers like those of Mary J. Blige and Biggie Smalls and making hip-hop mainstream.
Diddy finally has the key to the city!
With his own record label, reality TV franchises, fashion brand, vodka, tequila, and a cable television channel, Sean Diddy Combs became a fixture on red carpets and in pop culture. Now, the self-proclaimed bad boy for life is facing the chance of life in prison as he goes on trial in New York on charges of sex trafficking, racketeering conspiracy, and interstate transportation for prostitution.
Probably one of the most famous people in the world. How does that inform his trial?
If you have been anywhere but under a rock in the last 2 to 3 decades or so, you either know his work directly or indirectly. And a lot of people have a difficulty of separating art from the person. And so will there be, to some degree, a connection of that for people that will be hard to separate? Absolutely.
Combs has pleaded not guilty.
He's going to fight this with all of his energy and all of his might.
Federal authorities began investigating Combs after his ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, brought a civil lawsuit against him. Combs settled one day after the lawsuit was filed with no admission of guilt. Ventura claimed in the lawsuit that Combs physically, sexually, and emotionally abused her during their on and off relationship. Ventura is expected to be a key witness for the prosecution.
Is Cassie Ventura the star witness?
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason why I say that is, you take Cassie Ventura's civil lawsuit, you take this federal indictment, and you see so much overlap between the two of them. I think it's Cassie.
The trial will also include testimony from 3 other alleged victims who have not been identified. 2 of those victims will be allowed to keep their identities concealed during trial. Combs is accused of abusing, threatening, and coercing the victims to participate in elaborate, drug-fueled orgies with male prostitutes that he called freak-offs.
He used the embarrassing and sensitive recordings he made of the freak-offs as collateral against the victims.
From what we know, the defense strategy is Sean Combs was a swinger, and bringing a third party or a fourth party or extra people into the bedroom in a consensual relationship is no crime.
Yeah, and I think that's the move. When you separate white parties from freak-offs, when you separate criminality from consensual sex that might not be as mainstream as especially the SDNY is, you take Sean Combs, he is in no way, shape, or form the average person in anything. And so why should the act that so many people do between consenting adults be as average or normal for him?
So then is the prosecution's job as simple as, seriously?
I mean, seriously, and listen to them. They didn't sign up for this. Who would sign up for this? Look at the evidence, look at the statements, look at the pictures if they have them. Look at the text messages in close in time about them describing these events.
Federal officers say they found what they believe is evidence of the so-called freak-offs when they raided 2 of Combs' homes last year, including drugs and more than 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant. Authorities say they also found firearms with defaced serial numbers.
There were these raids of his homes in Miami and in Los Angeles. There were guns drawn. Does any of that matter at trial? Or is just the result of all of that, the evidence that was collected, what matters?
When you tell, I think, the average person or juror that DHS or law enforcement showed up to Diddy's home with like Kevlar and body armor, I think the average person thinks, well, that's a really bad person. And so whether people want to admit it or not, they're going to infer criminality just based on how law enforcement operated in that. But the tangible should be, to your point, what was recovered.
The defense has tried to keep some of the evidence out, including this surveillance video first obtained by CNN that shows Combs kicking and dragging Ventura in a Los Angeles hotel. Combs' attorneys argued the video had been manipulated, a claim CNN denied. They've also described the video as depicting the end of an otherwise loving relationship.
Is there any way to look at what's on the video and see it the way the defense does, that this is the unfortunate end of a loving relationship?
Yes, but it's going to take some tightrope walking, threading the needle. There's an argument that he is guilty of something, but not guilty of what he's accused of.
The judge decided the video can be used. When he's not in court, Combs is incarcerated at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, a far cry from the lavish waterfront mansions Combs once called home.
Sean Combs was denied bail because prosecutors said he intimidated witnesses. Several judges agreed that part of his MO, as prosecutors laid it out, was to intimidate the people into silence. Is that why he's incarcerated?
He's in MDC. He allegedly got a cell phone at some point in time. He was using another inmate's, let's call it for lack of a better term, like a serial number, where you can dial in and use their number so you can't detect whether or not Sean Combs is using that phone or someone else. And it was that he had almost a campaign where he's trying to influence individuals. And I think all of that, the government said, he can't even follow the rules when he's incarcerated. What rules can we create that when he is out on some amount of bond or bail, that he'll follow those rules?
The jury is expected to be finalized Monday, with the lawyers closing in on 12 jurors and 6 alternates who will ultimately decide if the mogul who launched major music careers, a fashion brand, and liquor labels will face the possibility of a life behind bars.
Let's bring in Aaron Katersky. Aaron's been on this case since day one. He's going to be inside the courtroom every day for this trial. Right now, he is outside the federal courthouse in Lower Manhattan. Aaron, bring us up to speed on this process. How big was this jury pool, and how will they choose who will decide this case?
There are potentially hundreds of prospective jurors who were sent written questionnaires to fill out. And at bottom, like any case, Eva, the main question is, can you be fair? Can you be impartial? Can you set aside any of your perceptions, either about the case or the defendant, and come to court with an open mind and decide strictly on the evidence? But Eva, this is Sean Combs, so there were some rather unique questions, like what kind of music do you listen to? And a few of the prospective jurors said they liked hip-hop from the 1990s, when Combs was rising to fame and becoming the impresario that he was. And then there were other questions about the nature of the allegations. Can you sit through a potentially 2-month trial and talk about sexually explicit things with fellow jurors when it comes time to deliberate? And there was one woman who said that she would faint if made to discuss those things. And she recalled an episode when something sexual came up in junior high school and she blacked out. She was excused from the jury pool. So there are unique challenges because of who Combs is and what the allegations are.
People are always really fascinated by jury selections. So I'm curious, you mentioned some of those questions, but what do they ask these people to determine who gets to stay and who goes?
Well, they want to know primarily, can you be fair and put things out of your mind? And look, who hasn't heard of Sean Combs? It seemed nearly every prospective juror seemed to know one of the high-profile names that may come up, knew of Combs's career, whether in music or in reality television, plenty of Making the Band viewers in the jury pool. And others were asked about what they heard of the case, and many said they had seen the video of Combs and Cassie in that Los Angeles hotel, but they pledged Eva they would put it out of their mind if they advanced through the jury process.
Aaron Katersky for us there. Thank you so much, Aaron. Let's bring in ABC News contributor Brian Buckmeyer. Brian, you have also been in court this week alongside Aaron. Okay, so not only do we have a celebrity defendant, but he has a pretty high-profile defense team, names that people know. Walk us through who's on his team.
So first and foremost, we have Mark Agnifilo. He is what we would call the first seat or the attorney in the case. But from my understanding, this is truly a team. It's hard to say which one is the more important one than the other. And when you actually watch them in court, it is very much a collaborative process. From there, we have Tini Garagos, and you might hear Garagos and think, who is that? That's Mark Garagos' daughter. She and Mark are on the same firm. We also have Alexandra Spiro. She is an appellate attorney who is not only participating in the trial itself, but also helping to make sure that if there are appellate issues, if Sean Combs is convicted, what may happen in terms of arguments down the road. We also saw a very other high-profile attorney by the name of Brian Steele. People are going to remember him from Young Thug's defense. He was the lead attorney in that case that didn't get the case dismissed, but a very, very favorable resolution. And then you have some, I guess, if you're not in the legal field, such as myself, some lesser known but local talent as well. Xavier Donaldson is another defense attorney who's very strong within the Brooklyn and New York defense community and the Southern District of New York. And then I think in total you have about 7 or so other attorneys and some jury consultants as well helping out in Sean Combs' case.
This is a big team.
Yeah. Yes and no. I always kind of, when people ask me that question, I say, you may see 7 defense attorneys or 6 attorneys, whatever it may be at the table, but when you compare it to the government on the other side, who has about 5 attorneys, they also have the entire office of the Southern District of New York. So their team is small compared to that of the government.
Let's talk about the government's team here. It's an all-female team for the prosecution. Is this a strategy or just coincidence here?
I mean, I can't really look into my magic globe, so to speak, and speak for the U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of New York, but I don't think you make this mistake. I don't think this is something that just happens, so to speak. This is a case that, by and large, is talking about freak-offs. By and large, it is talking about a male defendant who is accused of sexually assaulting and trafficking and transportation for the purpose of prostitution, both male and female. So I think there is a strength in having women talk about these cases, not only for direct examination, because they will be initially questioning these individuals, and those potential and alleged victims may be more comfortable in those kind of conversations. But I don't think it's a mistake. It could be part of a strategy.
Brian Buckmeyer, don't go anywhere. We're going to be asking some more questions. Still ahead, the science behind picking the jury who will determine Diddy's fate. Our expert panel will break it down. While all eyes are on the sex trafficking trial of Sean Diddy Combs, here's a quick look at the other big court cases we're following. Testimony from first responders and experts has been the focal point this week in the Karen Reed murder retrial. The Massachusetts woman is accused of killing her boyfriend, a Boston police officer, by hitting him with her SUV and leaving him to die in 2022. Her attorneys argue the investigation was riddled with errors and claim witnesses colluded on their narrative about the officer's death. Reed has pleaded not guilty. A jury found 3 former Memphis cops not guilty on state charges in the beating death of Tyree Nichols. 2 other former officers previously agreed to plead guilty to state charges. The defense argued Nichols was actively resisting arrest and that their use of force followed department policy. The 3 officers already face years in prison after being convicted of federal charges last year. Back now to the government's case against hip-hop mogul Sean Combs. Right now, I'm joined again by ABC News contributor Brian Buckmeyer, along with Dr. Eric Rudish, managing partner and senior litigation consultant at Blueprint Trial Consulting. He also studies juror behavior here in New York. Okay, Eric, we have to start with you. You're not involved in this case, but you are a jury expert of sorts. There is some science behind choosing a juror. Break this down for us. I'm fascinated.
Absolutely. There's a lot that goes into selecting a jury well before trial. So jury consultants typically conduct mock trial exercises or other jury research exercises to determine what are the characteristics of jurors that you want, and more importantly, whom you don't want to be on the jury. So based on that research, basically you're testing your case like a focus group in front of jurors, and you're determining who are the individuals who are going to be most receptive to your product, in this situation, your case. So based on that, you're looking for certain characteristics of jurors that you're going to then use to guide you when you're selecting your jury.
So you kind of have a profile of what you're looking for.
That's exactly. You create a jury profile based on the research that you conduct well before trial.
Brian, let's talk about this jury questionnaire. We've heard a lot about it. The questions, for example, take the video showing Cassie being kicked and punched, which was obtained by CNN. What happens if someone's already seen that video?
So Eric is the science behind it. I try to follow guidance if I ever get the privilege of working with someone with him. But what you do is you take something like the video, right? And it's out there. You have to deal with it in some way, shape, or form. So you put it in a question as a questionnaire. And what we're seeing in the court here is if people say, yes, I've seen it, then there's a follow-up question. And it's not so much about, did you see this evidence? Okay, well, you must be off the case. No, there are follow-up questions. And we're looking both the verbal responses they give, and in my opinion, also the physical reaction as to how they describe something, or even the way in which they describe it. If you see someone kind of scowl and say, yeah, I saw that video, oh, I can put it aside. Well, yeah, the words may say one thing, but the facial reaction says another thing. You might hear someone say, yes, I saw the video, and because of the video, I think that Sean Combs is X, Y, and Z. And the judge will follow up and say, okay, we understand you have that opinion, but can you put that aside and only listen to the evidence as presented to you and judge his guilt or innocence based on that? If a person says no, they're out for cause. The person says yes, and both sides can sometimes begrudgingly agree to let that person move on to the next round. They will move on to the next round, and ultimately defense or government may choose to eliminate them for another reason other than for cause.
So you really need to get an impartial jury. So play defense attorney for me here. What are the red flags? What makes you hesitate on a person? So
it's really case by case. I think Eric used a perfect word earlier. It's bespoke in terms of how you're trying to find that person. And so you're looking at a case like this where you say, have you or anyone you've known been a victim of sexual assault? Depending on the answer and how they give that answer and how the judge instructs them as to something like, I'm very sorry that this happened to you some 2 years ago, 20 years ago, but do you understand that that person is different than Sean Combs, who's being accused of a similar crime, what it may be? When someone's answering that question, I'm looking and kind of gauging as to how they're responding to that, body language, what they're saying. And based on that, I'm making either the legal arguments or just a personal choice to have them not be on that case because I'm eliminating them, not necessarily picking them.
Eric, I mean, this is not a normal trial. Everyone knows who Sean Diddy Combs is. He's super famous here, right? How does that impact a juror and the decisions that they make?
So one of the key questions on the questionnaire is what opinions that they have of Sean Combs. Have they formed any opinions about this particular case? Have they seen the Cassie video, for example? So we all know that pretty much everyone knows who Sean Combs or Puff Daddy or P. Diddy is, but it's, what do they know about him? What opinions have they formed? And ultimately, can they be fair and impartial? And then it's not only what they write on the questionnaire and what they say during voir dire, but how they say it. So do they have a negative impression just based on how they're responding, or do they look like they could be fair and impartial?
Eric Rudish, Brian Buckmeyer, so much interest in this jury for sure. Thank you so much for both being here. Coming up, what happens when a cultural icon goes to trial? The delicate balancing act of trying celebrities when we come back. From music to fashion to reality TV, Diddy's star power in pop culture has been clear as he's built his image over several decades. Now, his legacy as a famous entertainment mogul is front and center as his sex trafficking trial moves forward. Kelly Carter covers entertainment and pop culture for us. Kelly, thank you so much for being here. We are no doubt going to hear more about those famous, extravagant parties Diddy was known for throwing. How did those events shape his reputation? Did they add to his power?
Absolutely. You know, these events that he used to have, and we're not just talking about the white parties. We're talking about, quite frankly, any party that Sean Combs extended an invitation to attracted the A-list of the A-list, you know, and if you got that invitation, you got like a Willy Wonka golden ticket to an experience, to a party, a chance to interface and rub shoulders and hobnob with some of the biggest in business and most certainly the biggest in entertainment and popular culture. Colossal.
He's pleaded not guilty, but if Sean Combs is convicted of these charges, he could be looking at decades in federal prison. Based on what we've seen with other celebrities, what's the bigger possible impact here?
I mean, I think so much of it remains to be seen. You know, the thing that is so loud to me is the silence, essentially, of the entire industry. And I think that's because everyone tends to be taking a wait and see attitude for the most part. You know, we still don't know who all ultimately might even show up in court, you know, in support or maybe not in support of Sean Combs. And we don't know whose names we're going to hear ultimately called. We've heard a couple of names so far in the jury selection of A-list names that have been mentioned, but we don't know ultimately who else will be called. So I think that ultimately can have a really big cultural impact, you know, and let's think about, you know, we've seen this before. We've seen these larger than life celebrities like Michael Jackson or O.J. Simpson, men who have touched so many different components of pop culture in the world of sports and music, film, and so on, and how it's ultimately affected pop culture, their stature in pop culture, and certainly the worlds that they exist around and inside of. And so, I mean, we'll see what ultimately happens with Sean Combs, but I tell you this, everybody is paying attention to it. That is for sure.
Kelly Carter, thank you for your insight. We appreciate you. And thank you for joining us for the first episode of Burden of Proof, the Case Against Diddy. We'll be back with new episodes every day of the trial as soon as opening statements begin. We'll be bringing you the latest from the courtroom, plus live analysis from experts and contributors. The show streams right here on ABC News Live, Disney Plus, and Hulu at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. I'm Eva Pilgrim. Have a good night.